Welcome to Rebel Nurse, the podcast that's here to show you what is possible with your nursing degree. I'm your host, Erica Browning, a proud nurse and your guide to exploring all the unique and exciting opportunities this profession has to offer. Let's get into today's conversation. Welcome to the Rebel Nurse podcast show. This is Yazmin Sharifi. She is a DNP and she's an OR nurse. Okay, I'm so excited to talk to you because how many times do nurses hear that they can do OR, but you don't really know what the nurses are doing. I don't know what they're doing. So I'm so glad to have you on, and you're going to tell us all about it. But before we start, tell us how you got into nursing in general.
I sort of fell into it, believe it or not. I knew in high school that I wanted to be in the medical profession, in the medical field. I didn't know what that was. And when I got to college, I was still feeling it out. I started as a biology major. My best friend was going into the nursing program. And I was like, that sounds interesting. So entered the nursing program with her. That was back in 1987 or 84, actually. Finished the nursing program and started a nursing career back in 1987. So it was just one of those things, and so happy it happened.
So where did you start?
I'm originally from New Jersey. When I graduated in 87, I started at a teaching hospital on a medical floor.
Medical. So not med-surg, just medical.
It was strictly medical patients. They were cardiac, GI, and respiratory. So strictly medical, and spent 2 years there before I moved out to California. And when I moved out to California, I thought I still wanted to work on a medical floor, realized I was burnt out. That was real burnout, and started looking for something else and got a job at a surgery center in the recovery room of all places. And 2 days into my job there, the director of the facility tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, do you want to work in the OR?" I was like, I'm young, 23, 24. I'm like, sure, why not? Could be fun. I was up for anything at that point. Like they say, the rest is history. I started there in the OR. I ended up running the darn place by the time I left 3 years later and started my OR journey.
So you started your nursing journey in 1987, and you're still nursing. You're still doing it.
Still doing it in the OR.
So how long in the OR?
35 years. And look, every darn minute of it. I can't imagine doing any other kind of nursing. Throughout my career, I thought about ER and ICU because I like that fast-paced adrenaline rush kind of thing, but I just couldn't do it. I just love the OR so much. And I just love the fact that nobody knows what goes on back there.
We have no idea. We're going to get into your journey because you're doing all sorts of things. You're not just doing OR nursing, but we'll leave that till the end. What exactly does an OR nurse do? What are you doing back there?
We're doing a lot of things. I joke that nurses lose all their skills or don't use any of the skills they learned in nursing school when they enter the OR. And it's kind of true. I call it a different kind of nursing. We're still doing patient assessments, but it's a different patient assessment. So our job is really to make sure that the patient is safe during surgery and that everyone that's providing care is doing it in a safe manner. I call us the OR police in a way, but still providing nursing skills and interventions within our scope of practice. We use a lot of equipment, a lot of state-of-the-art stuff. So there's a technical portion to it as well.
So when you're in the OR, you have the surgeon, you have a nurse. Who else is in there?
So normally you have a surgeon, you have a surgical tech, you have an anesthesiologist. Sometimes you might have an assistant surgeon or a PA or an NP helping the surgeon, and yourself, the OR nurse. And you, as the OR nurse, are responsible for everything that goes on in that operating room. You are ultimately the one who makes sure that policies are followed and standards are in place, keeping the patient safe.
Are you giving medications?
You do. You give medications. You provide wound care, if you will. You prep the patient. You help with the draping. You do counting, you count instruments, you count soft goods, sponges, those kinds of things.
There's a surgical tech, which I imagine, I don't know that they know more, but they're at least responsible for the equipment, right? Are you also responsible for the equipment? Do they fall under your purview? Are you delegating to them?
Yes. So you are the licensed individual in the room. A surgical tech is not licensed. So you are monitoring their work. You're monitoring what they're doing to ensure that they're doing it within their scope of practice and that they're doing it safely. So their job is to pass instruments to the surgeon, but you're supposed to make sure that they're doing it under sterile technique, that sterility isn't broken, and that they're providing that safe care. Yes, they fall under your purview.
Have you ever had, I'm sure you've had to, in your 35 years, be like, nope, you broke sterile technique. Nope, nope, nope. I bet they love it, don't they?
They loved me. Yes. As an OR nurse, you really do need to be tough skinned. And I say that, but you do need to be able to speak up and be vocal and call people out when they're not performing, including the surgeon. So I've called out the surgeon, I've called out the surgical tech, the anesthesiologist, because your job is to make sure the patient's safe.
Oh boy. Okay. So I've heard of the role of a circulator nurse. Is that different than the nurse who's in the OR?
No. So the circulator is the OR nurse. The term circulate comes from the job they're supposed to do. They're supposed to circulate throughout the room, always looking and making sure that everything is working like it's supposed to, making sure that, if they turn the bed, the patient's arm didn't fall off the arm board, the patient's still strapped in, that things are where they need to be at all times. So they are circulating about the room, and that's where that term circulator comes in.
Okay. So it is the OR nurse. This isn't some other sort of role. Okay. So what does your week look like? Is it 312s? What's the schedule?
Fortunately, nowadays, OR nurses can work 12s, they can work 8s. Where I am, we do 10s, 12s, and 8s, and there's weekends involved too. Most OR nurses have to take call unless they work at a trauma center where it's 24/7 and there is no call. They have night shift and day shift, but there is call involved, and some people don't like it and some people like it. And you can always work in a surgery center where it's Monday through Friday, no weekends, no holidays. So there's options.
Are there nights? I'm sure you're on call at night, right?
Yeah. So if you are on call, normally you are on call during the night shift. So anywhere from 7P to 7A, unless, like I said, you work in a trauma center where you are in the unit, in the OR on the night shift, if that's what you prefer. But many a nights I've gotten called out of bed.
I know there's an orientation. How long is this orientation? I've heard it's like 9 months long. I guess it depends on the facility.
The Peri-Op 101 is really 6 months long. It's 3 months of didactic and then 3 months of on the unit clinical, as we call it, hands-on training. But it's also definitely up to the facility, and everyone learns at a different pace, right? So some nurses may need a couple of extra weeks, maybe another month. The whole point is that it's tailored to you. Hopefully, the educator is doing that work with you and making sure you're getting a really good orientation, and however long that takes. But the program is designed to be 6 months long.
Can new grads do it?
Yes.
They can?
Yeah. In my time, my generation, you had to have that 2 years of med surge under your belt before you could go to the OR. Nowadays, we take new grads, we take seasoned nurses, we take everyone. We are definitely in a shortage. And so we are open to taking nurses straight out of school and training them. And, they do really well. They do just as good as seasoned nurses do. So really, it doesn't matter anymore.
So how does one even know that they want to be an OR nurse? Have they shadowed, or they just thought it sounded interesting? Like, what many reasons that people come into OR nursing?
Some people, if you're lucky and your program allows you a day or two in the OR, that's fantastic. But a lot of nurses don't get that opportunity. Some do, some YouTube. But if you like working independently as well as in a team, there's a lot of teamwork that happens in the OR. You have to be able to work with the surgeon and anesthesia and surgical tech. It's not all about you. But if you like working in that team environment, and you like working in a semi-fast-paced environment, and you like the fact that your patient's asleep most of the time, and you don't have that interaction with the patient, some nurses like that. They want interaction with the patient. There's little interaction with patients as an OR nurse. So if that's something that interests you, then the OR could be a place for you. And every day is different.
So when you show up to work, like you're working with the surgeon, the anesthesiologist, and everyone in the operating room, but you don't answer them. Do you have a charge nurse? Do you have a OR nursing director? Like, how is it organized?
In most organizations, there is a charge nurse. The chain of command is charge nurse, supervisor. Normally, they are one and the same, manager and then director. So if you have issues, obviously you go to your charge nurse or supervisor first, and then manager and up the chain. Here in our organization, we have coordinators, we have charge nurses, we have supervisors as well. We try to give our nurses as much support as we can. Some of our cases require a lot of manpower and some do not. We try to do what's best for them and the patient at the same time.
So if you're a nurse who's in the OR room, you're going to have a resource like a charge nurse who's working the same time that you are, that you have someone to talk to. It's not just you on your own.
Correct. Oh, yeah. There's always somebody around and there's always a resource to you. And that would be a charge nurse or a coordinator or a supervisor. Absolutely.
Would that maybe be different if you're like in a surgical center?
It shouldn't be. There should still be someone they can call. There should always be somebody in charge, and that's your resource, depending on the organization that you work at. There should always be somebody. You're never alone.
I don't care how many years you've had. I don't want to be alone.
No, I agree.
That's one great thing about the ER. It's fast paced. It can be a little rough and tumble, but you're at least never alone. Someone will come to you. And there's often the joke that in these times of CPR, too many people come to you and the room is filled with people, looky-loos. And are you doing anything? Can you at least hand me, a syringe? But I feel like sometimes there's some nurses like on the floors, maybe a regular floor. There are not doctors around that you can talk to. You have your fellow nurses, but no, I need an order now. And in the OR, the surgeon's right there. The anesthesiologist is right there. The ER, they're sitting right next to you and you're both documenting. And I feel like on the floor, maybe they're around during the day sometimes, but you got to track them down sometimes.
That's true. That's the one thing I do like about the OR is that you really form relationships with your surgeon partners and your anesthesiologist because you're working with them all the time. They are always there. You're always working closely with the medical staff and you really form relationships with them where on the floors, you don't get to do that. And I think that's really a plus. I actually enjoyed that. I like that the collegiality that comes from working with your physician partners, I think is so important, especially when you're trying to make things happen. You need their support, right, to drive change. That's what I really love about the OR is that relationship that's built.
Okay. So let's say you're a nurse. You've been a nurse for a couple of years and you're like, I'd like to make a change. And the OR sounds interesting to me, but I don't really know if I'd enjoy it. And it's a big commitment, to the unit and to yourself to change what you're doing. What would you suggest to that nurse to learn more? I know what I would suggest. I wonder if it's the same thing you would suggest. What would you tell them?
First, you can reach out to the hospitals in your area and see if they allow you to shadow nurses at the operating room, depending on where you are. Actually, if you work at a hospital, if you're currently working, you can always reach out to the OR since you're already employed and just ask if you could spend the day in the OR. I've done that for nurses in other areas. ICU and ED, when we've had our programs come about, they're like, you know what, I would love to know what it's about. Do you mind if I come up and spend a day? And their day off. And I'm like, sure, that's totally fine. Because I also want to know that you want to be there, right? So I want to make sure that the choice that you're making is right for both of us. So reach out to the OR director, reach out to the OR manager at the hospital that you're working at, and ask them if you can come spend the day and see if it's something you really want to do. Because it's a big commitment.
It is. That was going to be my answer. If you're in the hospital, just march yourself down there. Maybe look on the website, see if there's an opening. There may or may not be. And if there's not, don't let that deter you. There might be in a month or two. March yourself down there in your scrubs. You don't have to be in business casual. Knock on the door or talk to the unit clerk. Hey, I want to talk to the charge nurse, or is there an assistant director or director here? for the unit, introduce yourself, say hello. I'm really interested in doing this, but I'm not sure. Is there any way that I could come in on my day off and just shadow and just look? And maybe you do several days, but on the first day, I just want to be in there and I just want to see. I'll be out of the way. I'm not touching anything. Don't you think?
Absolutely.
I feel like most managers would be like, yeah, let's see where we can get you in.
Of course. Yeah. First of all, it shows the manager and the director that you really have an interest, right? You're taking the time to come down there to meet them and take this initiative. I think it says a lot. And again, you want to make sure that the move you make is actually right for you. And the best way to do it is to get into the OR and actually see what's happening. I've done it before, and I would imagine that others would be happy to do it as well. I think it's a smart thing to do. Yeah.
I think that's great. And I know there's so many nurses who are like, okay, I can do this. But you're an OR nurse with 37 years experience in nursing. OR nursing is not the only thing that you're doing. You're also an entrepreneur and then also a testifying expert for matters in the OR. But let's get to your entrepreneur journey first. What business do you have?
So my business, it's really to support OR nurses and to provide education to OR nurses. We in the OR, again, are so different. And when it comes to renewing our license and doing CEs and all of that, I love my geriatric patients, but I don't always want to do a CE on geriatric patients. I rather do a CE on OR nursing. And there's not a lot out there. That's what RN Mentor is. It's a platform for OR nurses to get education, continuing ed units, and anything and everything OR.
Do you offer CEs that are more oriented to OR nursing?
Correct.
Okay. I love that because nurses, how many times are you going to do your CEs and it's on something random and you're like searching for something that actually applies to what you're doing. And you're like, hey, OR nurses, here's some OR nurse CEs.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And then you said regular education.
Yeah. Just, I have freebies on there. I have anything and everything related to OR nursing, mostly for the newbie. Those with experience can go there too and learn something. I continue to learn. Even after 37 years, I'm learning every day. The learning never stops. So as much information as we can get, the better we can be at what we do.
Yeah. So in addition to your job and your education business on the side, you're also a testifying expert. How did you even get started in that? In the OR?
Every nurse should be on LinkedIn with their resume and their experience, because I got a call one day from an attorney and he asked me if I did any kind of expert work or could review a case for him. And again, Yazmin's like, oh, sure, I'll do it. And that sort of started that whole legal nurse consulting, but he found me on LinkedIn. So I think it's so important to put yourself out there if you want to do something like that, because people are looking and they need experts, especially in the OR. It's probably one of the most specialized where it's really tough. You can't just get a med-surg nurse to read an OR document. So not that they can't, but the specifics of it. So it's highly specialized. And so that's sort of how I fell into that as well.
I love that. I'm going to have a series. It's like experts are like under the umbrella of legal nurse consulting. And there's attorneys who do the med mal cases and personal injury cases and all these sorts of cases. Yes, they can pay a doctor, but sometimes you don't need a doctor. You need a nurse from the perspective of a nurse to review this and tell me what is going on. And so sometimes they want someone specialized. And I join all these groups. I'm not a legal nurse consultant in anything. I do something else, but there's a lot of overlap. And so there's nurse experts in like long-term care facilities, med-surg, CRNAs, OR, ER, trauma, telemetry, cardiac cath lab, all sorts of things like that. And so LinkedIn is great. It's very underutilized for nurses, but I wanted to highlight that's what you do because one, you're a nurse, 35 years, you love your bedside job, but there's other things that you can do if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I also teach as well.
You do.
Yeah, I'm also an instructor in the nursing program.
Oh my, Yasmin, I saw your Instagram actually last night where you're like, it's a work night, but the mister wanted to drag me out. What was it, a concert?
It was Phantogram. Couldn't miss it.
How do you have time to do anything?
I don't know. The thing is, I think if I didn't have all of this to do, I'd be bored. I don't know. I just would be like, what am I doing with myself? I sort of live in that little bit of chaos. Like, I don't know if I enjoy it or what, but multiple balls in the air. I think it's the OR nurse in me, like having all these things happening while I'm in the room and managing all of it. I think that's how I live life too. But at the same time, if you don't try it, you don't know if you're going to like it.
Right.
So I always like to try it because it might be something you really enjoy doing and it's not work then. It's just something you enjoy doing. But as nurses, we can do a lot.
So now you're an OR nurse. You've used your degree in that way, and you have an education business, and you teach, and you're a legal nurse expert.
Yes.
So nurses out there, you don't have to do all this, but this is to showcase what you can do if you want to. And this is just within OR nursing. It's just one little slice, and nurses big, and this is just one little slice.
Yeah.
Well, that is so cool.
I often reflect on my journey, my career, and I think to myself, my career has been good to me. Nursing has been good to me. It's come a long way, and I appreciate it, and I thank it for giving me all the opportunities. But you also need to go out and kind of get them as well. You need to put yourself out there. But there's just so much you can do, and it's such a great profession. And I'm just thankful that what happened 35 years ago actually happened.
You fell into it. That's why I wanted to do this podcast, is to showcase all of the many ways that you can use the nursing degree. You know, if you're not happy where you are, because not all situations are great for nurses where they're working. We recognize that. Make a change. Here's some ideas. I like to brainstorm. So I'm like, let's think of ideas. How about this, this, and then you go forth and do whatever it is you're going to do.
Nothing's stopping you. You can do anything you want. You try it. And if you don't like it, move on. You don't have to be in it. You can do something else.
Don't let anyone tell you have to stay anywhere or someone's going to think something. If they're going to think poorly about you, they were already going to think that. So don't let it stop you. And they don't pay your bills.
Absolutely right. That is so true.
Okay, so let's move into this portion of get to know you. And then I want to tell people where to find you so they can follow your journey, look into your education or that sort of thing. And this is a little get to know you portion. It's usually 3 to 5 questions. It depends on how chatty we get. But the first question I always ask everyone is, what was your first job?
My first job, very, very, very first job, was in a factory in the office filing papers. I was in high school. It was an after-school program, and I hated it. But it was a job, and that's what I did. I was in an office just filing stuff until I decided I don't like working in the office. I think I'm going to go work at the hospital. So that's what I did.
Nice. What was your first job in the hospital then?
I worked in the lab. I worked as the clerk in the lab. Back then, everything was on paper. We used to get all the lab reports and write the results on a big sheet of paper and call the floors with the results, and then take the lab slip and go up to the floor and put it on the chart, the little sticky papers, and put all the results in the chart.
But what was your title? You didn't have to be like certified or anything.
No, I was just the clerk, secretary.
Wow. And that was your first hospital experience.
My first hospital experience, and I loved it. Loved being in the hospital. It's great. Where it was meant to be.
Okay, so my next question is, like, what is your go-to junk food?
Jack in the Box egg rolls.
What? I've never even heard of this.
They are so good. So if you want to be bad, you get the 3-pack.
Do you do this after an OR shift?
Yes. They are so good. When I'm feeling like, you know what, screw it, I need something, that's what I get. They are amazing.
Oh my God. I interviewed Valerie Smith. She's the Balanced Insight gal. I don't know if you follow her. Her first job was at Taco Bell. What did she say her favorite junk food was from there? She said they don't even have it anymore. You could feed a whole family from Taco Bell back in the day.
I have to say their tacos are good though. I don't know if that's meat or not, but it's still good.
I'm not sure what's in it. You know what my biggest complaint about Taco Bell is? Diet Pepsi. Where is the Diet Coke? I'm one of those people. It's okay. I'll get over it. Okay. What is your favorite movie?
Okay, so I have seen Grease with Olivia Newton-John 13 times.
That's Grease 1.
The original with John Travolta, and to the point where I could have sang every song. So I guess you could say it was my favorite movie. I just loved it.
I'm notorious. I will watch because when I'm tired at night, I don't want to start something new. I don't want to start a new series. I don't want to start a new movie. I just want to watch a rerun of something because I'm going to fall asleep in 5 minutes. And so I've seen like 5 minutes of several movies many times. This is probably going to offend people. I did not care for Grease 2. Well, that was Michelle Pfeiffer, right?
Yeah, I know.
No, it's Grease 1 with John Travolta and Hopelessly Devoted to You.
Oh my God. Yes. Yes. So I'm an 80s girl. I'm stuck in the 80s music. I follow someone on Instagram that's, 80s. I'm just terribly still living back there. It was a great era. So all of my favorites are from probably the 80s.
So what's your favorite like music from the 80s? Like your favorite musicians?
Some of my favorite bands, Rush. I love Journey. I was a big Def Leppard fan. Pat Benatar, love you, Pat. It was her birthday a couple of days ago.
Hit me with your best shot.
Yes, amazing. I have a picture of myself attempting to get the Pat Benatar haircut back in the 80s.
Was it like a little pixie cut?
Yeah, she had the short cut. It was close to the neck, and I've got curly hair and she's got straight hair. It didn't work. Total fail. But it was a good try. Those pictures are buried somewhere deep in my closet, but I tried. She was just amazing.
I think that you should show one. Well, Yazmin, thank you for coming on the podcast. I always like the get to know you portions because you give information, but they're like, I don't really know this person. And in the get to know you portion, they're like, oh, okay, we're similar or we like the same things. And they feel like they get to know you and maybe all of the information will resonate better. So where can nurses find you? On Instagram, a website, where are you?
On Instagram, I'm at ORRN Mentor. The website is www.orrnmentor.com. Those are the two places that you will find me the most.
ORRNmentor.com and then ORRN Mentor on Instagram.
Correct.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your knowledge. I learned a lot. Maybe I'll be an OR nurse if this case management doesn't work out.
Come on over.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Hey, Rebels, before you go, don't forget to check out our merch. From witty apparel to stickers and hats, we've got it all. Head to our shop at shoprebelnurse.com to find your favorites and use code RN15 for an exclusive 15% off. Again, that's shoprebelnurse.com. And thank you for supporting Rebel Nurse and for being here.